So, racism, xenophobia, bigotry. We live in such a polarized world, and everyone seems to be increasingly more convinced of their rightness and the wrongness of everyone around them, or those who have a different opinion. So if I asked you, are you a racist? Are you a xenophobe? Are you a bigot? I'm guessing chances are pretty good. You would say, of course not. But let me ask a different question. Are you ignorant? And before you answer that question, let me give you a working definition just for the purposes of this discussion today. Webster's dictionary defines ignorant in part as uneducated about a particular topic or one who makes inaccurate assumptions based upon a lack of awareness or insight. Now, the majority of us would not self-identify as ignorant, but have you ever made an inaccurate assumption about other people? Have you ever stated an opinion about something that you felt so convicted about and you didn't have all the facts? You weren't an expert on that particular topic? I mean, pick a topic: politics, abortion, immigration, police reform, doesn't matter. We've all been there, and we've all felt very strongly about something, and we've all communicated our opinion about that topic. And in doing so, perhaps we've shown our ignorance. Now, think about the last time you engaged in a discussion with someone who is either misinformed or just plain ignorant about a topic that you are an expert. You've researched it. You've studied it. You've made very strong convictions about it. How easy is it to say that that person is ignorant? Not just ignorant, but that that person is a racist, a bigot, a xenophobe. Now, don't get me wrong. Scientific skepticism is healthy. So there are times where we need people to push back and say, hey, what about? Or have you replicated this or whatever? So take climate change, for example. That's a loaded topic. We need science to investigate those claims and systematically question the information, searching for flaws. I mean, that's what science is about. It searches for flaws and fallacies. But presenting actual facts and data that actually challenges our thinking sometimes makes us dig in our heels even more vigorously, and it makes us even more sure of our wrong position. So there are three blind spots that are related to our inability to be objective when someone says, that's not right, or have you thought about? And the first one is confirmation bias. And most of us know what confirmation bias is. It's that unconscious force that nudges us to seek out information that aligns with our existing beliefs. So the brain loves to be right. So it searches out evidence to confirm that which we already believe to be true. And confirmation bias shows up in the media that we listen to and in the news that we read. We pick out the bits of data that confirm our prejudice because it makes us feel good to be right, even if we're validating something that is in fact right. But when we want to be right badly enough, then we become prisoners of inaccurate assumptions, and we're unable to hear anything else because we're so focused on preserving that piece of our mental model that says, this is part of my identity, this is who I am. I want to share a study with you that was done back in 2018, and it was personal for me because it was conducted in Florida, and I happen to live in Florida, and we've had our share of pretty scary hurricanes the last few years. This was done in 2018, and it was conducted with more than 1,000 residents living in South Florida who were at risk from either the direct or indirect effects of flooding to their homes. And that includes decreases in their property values as coastal property is perceived now to be less desirable than before. But half of the participants in this study received a map of their own city that illustrated what could happen in 15 years if the present rate of sea level continued to rise, and there were a Category 3 hurricane accompanied by storm surge flooding. Those who had viewed the maps were less likely to say that climate change was, in fact, taking place. Furthermore, those who saw the maps were less likely than those who had not seen the maps to believe that climate change was responsible for those storms. We simply don't want to believe something that conflicts with our own reality. Now, a second cousin to confirmation bias is the backfire effect. And the backfire effect is, like, not only do we search out information consistent with our beliefs, but we instinctively and unconsciously protect those beliefs when we're confronted with information that conflicts with them. It's a defense mechanism that kicks in when someone gives us information, even if it's statistically sound information, research or data that disputes your position. And those facts and figures actually make our position even stronger. It's because that there's a cognitive dissonance that's produced by conflicting evidence that actually builds new neural connections that further entrench our original conviction. If somebody challenges something we believe, the brain creates new neural connections to make that conviction even stronger. And part of that is because we have our beliefs and our values. That's part of who we are. And so if someone challenges our beliefs, then they're actually challenging our identity, who we are and what we stand for. There was a 2006 study that was conducted to examine why sound evidence and research failed to correct misconceptions that people had about a certain topic. And in this study, subjects read fake news articles that included a misleading claim from a politician, I know, shocking, or a misleading claim and a correction about a polarizing political issue. People on opposite sides of the political spectrum read the same articles, they read the same corrections, and then when new evidence threatened their existing beliefs, they didn't open up and say, maybe I was wrong. They actually doubled down and said, no, I'm absolutely right. That they were even more entrenched in their position. Those corrections, when people came forward and said, here's data that corrects those misconceptions, they backfired. And the evidence made them more certain that their original beliefs were correct. As crazy amazing as the human brain is, it's crazy quirky too, and it is pretty fickle. The third one, I've talked about this before, and many of you know this, is the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's based upon the notion that we all have pockets of incompetence with an inverse correlation between knowledge or skills and confidence. So people who are ignorant or unskilled in a particular subject area tend to believe that they are much more competent than they are. Bad drivers believe they're good drivers. Cheapskates think they're generous. And people who have no leadership skills think they can rule the world. I mean, how hard can it be, right? But those who have the slightest bit of experience think they know it all. And then as people gain experience, they begin to realize, oh man, I don't know it all at all. This is the point at which they search out knowledge and begin to build their expertise. And those at the level of genius recognize their talent and they demonstrate the confidence commensurate with their ability. But there's also a corollary to that effect. Just as highly incompetent people overestimate their abilities, highly competent people tend to underestimate their abilities. They tend to believe that everybody knows what I know. Dunning and Kruger were the researchers who found this, and they found that most people, regardless of how they perform on a given task, rate themselves at a 7 or 8 out of 10. So the next time you're convinced of your rightness, maybe think about what biases are at work. And how receptive are you to understand why someone else disagrees with you? So this is not just about how we agree or disagree with other people, but what about when someone else disagrees with you? And two open-minded people trying vehemently to convince the other person of their rightness is not open-minded at all. It's a little bit of an oxymoron, but it happens all the time. I'll give you another definition just to serve as kind of a foundation for our discussion, which we'll kick off here in a minute. And that is what Merriam-Webster defines open-minded as receptive to opposing ideas. Most of us are just not as open-minded as we'd like to think. Like, when was the last time you made an assumption about someone who held an opposing idea or an opposing opinion? Did you take the time to really understand why they felt that way, how they got there, and then truly listen? It's really human nature to see ourselves, as Dunning-Kruger said, as more insightful and more right than the other person. Dunning-Kruger is also a second cousin to the illusory superiority bias, which says, I'm more right than you are. It's true for politics, it's true for religion, social issues, even fashion. And those topics often make for very contentious, uncomfortable, and frustrating conversations. And as we are getting ready for another Thanksgiving dinner, which everybody says, oh my gosh, how am I going to have conversation with Uncle Joe or Cousin Mary because they are on the other side of the spectrum than I am? These are biases that maybe we can look inside at ourselves. Instead of examining Uncle Joe or Cousin Mary, we can start to examine ourselves. There was a study done in 2017 in which scientists asked over 2,000 well-educated adults to consider arguments on politically controversial issues, the kind that you might be having at Thanksgiving this year. Same-sex marriage, gun control, the legalization of marijuana, abortion, pick one. There was no line of demarcation between liberals and conservatives. They were just people adhering to their own opinions and adamantly avoiding contrary opinions. When asked to discuss same-sex marriage, for example, approximately 2/3 of the people gave up a chance to win money in order to avoid just hearing opposing viewpoints, much less entertain them. So at a time when we are more convinced than ever of our own rightness, social scientists are exploring this concept of intellectual humility. And people with high levels of intellectual humility don't try to convince others of their own perspective. Rather, they encourage others to disprove what they already believe. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what my bias blind spot is because I can't see it.